Like today it's like, in order to spend time with other people, we've created this like entertainment industry. So you have people have to make money by themselves as an individual, and then they have to spend money to entertain themselves with other people around them. And then they have to go back and make more money. And it's like the time that we're spending entertaining and spending time with one another is shortened because there has to be more money to do more cool things with one another. And you're like, what is going on? Like, why did we build the system?
Welcome to the How to DAO podcast, your go-to source for everything about decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. We are not just here to inform, we are here to inspire and empower a new wave of creators and participants in the DAO space. We offer a comprehensive suite of courses tailored for everyone, from those taking their first steps in the DAO world to seasoned veterans looking for deeper insights. These courses cover everything from the fundamental blockchain and DAO concepts to advanced strategies in governance and tokenomics, ensuring you have all the knowledge and tools necessary to thrive. But we go beyond education. Upon course completion, you will have access to funding grants to launch your own DAO or secure a position within an existing one. We are committed to supporting you at every stage of your journey. On this podcast, you will hear from some of the brightest minds in the DAO community. Our guests share their personal stories, practical advice, and visionary insights, helping you navigate complex yet exciting landscape. And don't miss our newly released book, How to DAO, available at major US retailers or directly from our site at howtodao.xyz. And join our thriving community on Discord, where all these initiatives converge. You can find the invite link on our Twitter at howtodaobook. We believe passionately that DAOs are the future of coordination. Our entire initiative is designed to support this movement and help you be part of it. And now we will hear from our guests. So stay on. Welcome at our next How to DAO live stream. Today, we have Janine Ledger from EdgeCity on the podcast. Janine and I met probably like 3 years ago at Gitcoin. So we both work at Gitcoin for a couple of years, which was a very fun experience in Web3. And then Janine started focusing on pop-up cities, starting with Zuzalu, where I believe she was still involved with, and then spin off her own pop-up city called EdgeCity, and we will definitely get deeper into it. Janine is focused on building communities around the world and also supporting innovation and developing new technology. So stay on because this will be very interesting conversation, I hope. So welcome, Janine.
Thank you so much, Punkar. It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming. Well, we know each other for a while, but before we actually knew each other, I feel like you always been like building communities. Like you were always, even though you were working like in Deloitte in like a corporate settings, you were still building kind of communities on the side. So what got you into like this like community building mindset?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have always been building. I think growing up in South Africa, community was such a big piece of my upbringing. And, the sense of family, friends, and having people that we saw every weekend and sort of had beyond just our nuclear family was a super important part of growing up. And coming to the US, it was a pretty interesting and stark difference to start with, but got a much broader sense of like the nuclear family being the core of who people, spend time with. It was Thanksgivings were just your family. Christmases were just your family. There wasn't the sense of family friends and doing it all together. So based on that, I, looked into more of like, okay, well, what drives this culture? Like what drove the US to be different to South Africa? And I ended up actually studying human geography in college, along with art and developmental economics. Based on that, I sort of spent a lot of time thinking about people and place and what drives people in place, what's important. And I remember that there was a study that Harvard did on it was one of the longest studies on happiness and looking at, what was important. And friends and community were sort of the number one by far. And based on that, I sort of started thinking about like, okay, well, what does it look like to have community in my own life? And how do I, play that forward? And did a lot around small parties that I threw, doing co-living with like 20 to 30 different friends in mountain towns. During COVID, we did that in like 6 different mountain towns for like a month to 6 weeks each. And then moved to Austin full time, where there was much more of a push of like, how do we get friends to live close to one another? How do we get a larger community to support one another? There's some personal elements here that come in where I ended up losing 2 friends in quick succession, which really reminded me of like community is what helps you get through um, really like painful situations in life and really tragic situations. And it's not just about having 1 to 2 friends that can be supportive. It's about having a whole network of people that can show up and support you and support others in different ways. So that got me more on this journey of like, how do I bring community not just to my own life, but to other people's lives as well? And I started by being like, okay, in Austin, how do I do this? And we did an adult summer camp one weekend where I was like, okay, how do you actually like build a community to take them on vacation in a way and like jostle them out of the norm to then put them back in the norm and be more connected? So that was like, we had 150 people that came out to this adult summer camp where we did a whole bunch of like, kid-like games. And it really gave me the sense of like play is so important. And in my quest for finding community for myself and for others, I was looking at like different models of community that exist today. There's the country clubs, there's the Soho House model, there's the YPO forums, and you're just like, man, this whole like paying for membership, it doesn't feel good. Like it really didn't feel great. And I was like, community should be a public good. And we used to have so many third spaces that we would use as community. Like many people were religious and would go to the like public church on a weekend. There was community spaces that people would use. And we've sort of lost that in this world of like privatizing businesses and commercialization. So based on that, I was like, well, what industries are out there and like what technology could we potentially use to change the social norms of these communities that are being built and becoming like very private in nature and very, as a result, like sterile and not as dynamic. So that got me to sort of explore Ethereum and see that like every Ethereum project had a community manager. Now they were doing that all online and all sort of like these Discord groups and being really present on Twitter. And I was like, that is just not me. Like I'm an offline person. I believe that like community should be in person, and that like we haven't seen social media change the world in the way that it promised, right? Like social media was this promise of like, oh, you can now just stay at home and you can live in a metaverse world and you'll be totally fine. And it's like, well, that hasn't quite worked, right? Like people are more unhappy. They have higher rates of anxiety. It's like, what is going on with the world? So based on that, I was like, I want to figure out building offline communities and use this technology to support that. And there weren't many groups that were doing that in the Ethereum space at all. But that's kind of what led me to Gitcoin. And, I have so much admiration for Kevin in terms of how he thinks about public goods and how he thinks about like the world being different with better funding mechanisms to fund the edges. And I had this dream. I was like, I'm going to join this team. I'm going to learn all about like interesting public goods funding mechanisms. And then we can apply it to communities, right? Like you could have like created a quadratic round around a community and get everyone in the community to support specific initiatives. And if you did it with like a community's token that, existed, like this is all, stuff that hasn't happened and it's in the theoretical. But like if you do it around a community token, you find things that you want to invest in together, that token increases in value. The community wins by actually investing in the community. And that doesn't happen anywhere else. Like today, it's like, in order to spend time with other people, we've created this like entertainment industry. So you have people have to make money by themselves as an individual, and then they have to spend money to entertain themselves with other people around them. And then they have to go back and make more money. And it's like the time that we're spending entertaining and spending time with one another is shortened because there has to be more money to do more cool things with one another. And you're like, what is going on? Like, why did we build this system? But based on that sort of like, I learned a ton at Gitcoin. I think the biggest thing that I learned was like, you can have incredible theories. And, I think quadratic funding is one of these where it's like, it's an incredible idea in theory, and in reality there's like human dynamics that you have to actually think about, and like it plays out differently in the real world to what we wanted to in the theoretical. So it really drove me to think about like, how do I get into as much like practical learning as possible? And that was when I was doing this community stuff in Austin, and it was just like thriving in terms of like many different people getting together. But I realized how slow changing social norms was, where technology moves so fast. And I was like, how do I mix these two together? Luckily, it was, Vitalik was thinking about this idea with Zuzalu and figuring out like, how do you experiment with bringing to life this concept of a real crypto city or a network state per se, was kind of the start of the experiment. And it was just like the perfect opportunity to dive into. And I thank Vincent Weiser, who is really the driving force that got me looped in, because it was this like new way to iterate, and this new way of like, how do you actually iterate on community much faster than what happens in the real world? Because it's a lot easier to bring people together for a short amount of time, but long enough that it feels like it's real life. And that was kind of the experiment for Zuzalu. After that, we spun out and started EdgeCity as part of the Zuzalu ecosystem. So I'm still a big supporter of Zuzalu. Zuzalu is not owned by anyone. It was sort of this concept that we created. There's so many players involved in making that what it was and what it is today. And to me, it's just like building EdgeCity is a piece of pushing Zuzalu forward. And I think only in a few years' time, we'll start seeing how all of these different groups play together. But that's sort of like a premise of community that is built into much, much more than just community.
Well, seems you've been on this journey for a while. So that's amazing, and like I hope like all this like play out well, like the Zuzalu as a movement, and now there are so many different nodes coming out of it. I think the India, like the Zugrama just finished. Before that, Zoo Thailand, and for before that, I think EdgeCity was also in Thailand for a month. So there are so many like network states, those are experiments, and the people there I met are amazing, and it's always great to spend time. So definitely recommend anyone who is listening to apply for any event, because you will meet amazing people, make friends, and join a great community overall. But like want to make like step back a little bit what you mentioned somewhere midway about like everything being privatized, the like clubs be like paid membership. So I just had a discussion also on the live stream with Denison, the CEO of Tally, and we talk about it a little bit about like the late stage capitalism symptoms, or like how you can recognize it. And one of the things was like everything is getting privatized, everything is commoditized. You need to pay for basically everything. So there is no like you mentioned like public church. No, you will probably pay to be in church like at some point, or like private, like public clubs, like just let's go for a run. No, you pay to go running. And like this is happening, and I can see it in San Francisco. So many private clubs you can join. Some are a couple bucks, some are a couple $1,000. Depends how exclusive it should be. Do you think like we can reverse that kind of thing? With more like a network state approach using crypto, or what's kind of like your approach to that? Because it seems to me, from what I see just in the real life, like everyone is pushing towards that direction. Basically society is moving to that direction. So how we are thinking about like reversing a little bit the trend, or like adding alternative where we can actually have a communities which are not uh, basically privatized or like commoditized?
I think it's a really hard question. And I don't think there's a simple answer, to be honest. And I think it's too easy to simplify to say like, oh, things were free and now they're not. Like we've always paid taxes, and we just really relied on the government to do more of the like organizing. With church, everyone had to sort of pay penance or support the church in some way. Like it was just done in more of a like you pay what you can model, versus it is gated to get you in. So I do think that there's like a reminder that like community and public goods are never fully free, right? Like we've all been paying for public goods forever. Like that's not it's not going from free to privatized. It's going from paid in a different sort of like pay your capacity to privatized on a specific amount. So I think that there's like a real question to unlock there, but there's also this realization that I think a lot of people are coming to, which is, the government isn't necessarily serving everyone's needs as much, and private companies are serving them better. And I also think there's sort of a trend of like, not just private companies are serving them better, but technology is serving them better. So there's this like jump from like individuals and, a like centralized governance system of people making those decisions to technology making those decisions and deciding like what we pay. So I think that that's like just an important distinction to make. And I don't think that like the end goal of a network state is having things be free. I think there's a lot of other aspects to a network state that, we could go into, but like just want to caveat with like a network state is not just a community doing things together where everyone has it being accessible. And I think to date, it's like all of the, pop-up city experiments are still all, using tickets. Like it's not feasible not to. Like events and in real life experiences are so unbelievably expensive. As a business model, it does not make a lot of sense. So my general sense is like the hope is over time we can figure out better mechanisms to get us to a state of being able to have this accessible to people in a way that they can afford, right? But that's like contribution based. And I think it's really important to create cultures that at least have the space to experiment with that sort of thing. And my sense is the more that we go towards a direction of like consumerism, so someone is creating something and you buy it and you expect a service from them, that feels like a centralized type exchange where the one party has to give to the other party versus, and it's a one-way exchange versus a dynamic exchange. And I think step one is like, can we create more dynamic exchanges where people are still paying, but they're recognizing that like they'll get more out of the experience by contributing to it as well. And through that, I think we'll actually be able to create something more interesting in terms of mechanisms. And I think crypto will be the leading factor here that creates mechanisms that allow us to fund these types of spaces and communities and like much more richer environments by people just giving what they can to a thing. That's it. Like you look at DAOs today and they haven't succeeded at that model. And that was sort of like a big promise of them. And you look at sort of like the idea of launching a token. And it's like a lot of token launches don't have communities that like really want to be in the community. Like the incentive models aren't aligned. So from my standpoint, like while I want to use the technology that we have that like actually allows this stuff to happen, there's a lot of hurdles that we need to get over first in order to make that reality something that's successful versus just an experiment that like almost like creates the community's demise.
Yeah, I agree. Like some of the DAOs promises were definitely not met just yet, but we are working on it. Everyone is giving their own piece to that. We and just like to promote a little bit ourselves. We wrote a book about it. So if you want to learn more, go to howtodao.xyz. But how you are thinking about the blending of contributors and kind of attendees? Because like it feels to me like you were kind of touching upon that you are not like a service provider, but like, you go for events, you are either the attendee or you are the performer or, the one who is like running the event. But you touch upon the thing like you want to more like dynamic experience, like probably blending those two a little bit together, or how you are thinking about it from like EdgeCity perspective. Like, do you think like people can basically become like half attendees, half contributors, so they will do something for the others, therefore maybe earn some rewards, therefore have maybe even like cheaper, like I don't know, something? Or how are you thinking about it from EdgeCity perspective?
I think it's pretty simple. Everyone that is coming has to contribute in some way. You have to either host an event, you have to work on a project that you then demo at a demo day, you need to use the space to do interviews, you've got to participate in the health aspect of it. Like no one can come and just like not work out the whole time. Like you need to like be game to like make yourself healthier. While there, you have to have a growth mindset. So there's like expectations from people to contribute and to like build the sort of society that we want to see. And that's why it's sort of like we've been calling it a society incubator, because it's this idea of like, okay, can people come to this and experiment with new social norms that are actually focused on just like improving as a collective and everyone giving back to make that happen, versus just expecting us as organizers to do it for you. Like I can't make everyone's experience better, and it's not going to be as dynamic if our team is doing everything. It just becomes an event, and it just becomes this like experience that people have for a month that might be great, but like they haven't learned skill sets, they haven't like built more agency that they can take into the world. So we're really kind of selective about that, and like that's the one area where we like encourage everyone to do something. And based on that, our hope is that like people over time will help build this from just like a pop-up event experience to something that becomes much more meaningful in full-time places around the world.
That's cool. I actually didn't know. So basically you cannot buy yourself like full service. Like you actually have to contribute to the community to be part of it, which is nice. I like that model that like everyone needs to contribute. So there's no like free riders type of thing. And it feels also it's evolving in like ways you cannot predict, because like you get the people together, but you don't guide them per se, but you let them do their own thing. But also like appreciate like the focus on health. I think that's important. You know, the communities, like the first thing you mentioned, like was like super important to not be like lonely or like have the connections to people. But also the, I would say the second most important, keep yourself healthy also like physically, you know, and just be move a little bit, so on. So the EdgeCity, it's usually like 1 month long. So when you are building like the communities, like is that a kind of a problem in terms like that, like people get together just for that 1 month and then, you know, fell apart? Or is it like, is there some strategy that like the EdgeCity actually like the same people like stay together in a sense connected? Because like what you mentioned in Austin, like you live there and like people probably meet each other like every week, and it's like a long-term relationships. But for the pop-up cities, it's more like, you know, we meet for a month, but then we might not see each other for a year or two or never again. So how this kind of dynamic actually works?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that there's ways to look at it. Like one, like I don't think so. We're not necessarily calling ourselves like a pop-up city for the long term, right? And I hope that like everyone who's looking and excited about the space recognizes that there is a long-term vision that's not just like living in pop-up land forever. I think it sort of like almost creates like a Peter Pan dynamic forever, versus like, okay, how are we progressing to building something together for the long term? So when you think about, okay, these people are only together for a month, like then does it all just disappear? It's like you can't take away like valuable connections from people, and experiences like compound over time. Like the most valuable thing we have is like compounding experiences and compounding relationships. And what we've been able to see with EdgeCity that's very different to like an in-person long-term community that's in one space is just that the speed of iteration in that time, because it's a little bit like pressure boxed. Like you have only a month to focus on this project that you're working on and you need to get it tested. You have just a month to get insight from different people about what they're working on and all the different projects and build that relationship. You've only got a month to like test out this healthy regime that you then can carry forward after the fact. And it's a lot easier when people are like, okay, I've got a month, I need to do this during this time, than it is when people are like, well, I can try that next week, or I'll attend that next week, or I'll get there next week. So it's just a different type of dynamic. And like the full-time long-term communities are great, but like the type of experiences and social connections that you have in it and the type of pressures you have to like really work on things that are meaningful are much more reduced. So you might just sort of like fall into a routine that's just, it's not necessarily, okay, what am I building now to both like improve myself, but also like really move the world forward and learn about all these other industries that I should like be taking in, or test out and build a product that can be used in the real world. So we're seeing, even though the experiences are shorter, we're seeing a ton more innovation happen in the month-long period at Edge than in other like comparable full-time communities. And then the other aspect is the fact that we are doing them like on an iterative basis. It's not because we're like, oh, we just want everyone to come to Edge and not do anything else in their lives. It's like, what does it actually start to look like to build towards a full-time community that's seeing one another on a like continuous basis? And that doesn't mean everyone is coming to everything, but it does mean some people are coming to everything. And we're almost like building this global perspective while then sort of allowing some people to root in places. So to the point of, do people stay together after the fact? We've seen many folks that come to Edge that then go and co-live together somewhere else. Or someone that comes to Edge and gets inspired and then goes and builds their own pop-up city. Or someone that comes to Edge and is like, I'm now going to go back to my community where I live and host a salon every single week. So it's like taking elements with them to where they are permanently, and also trying to sort of like over time mix the permanence to temporary spaces that we built.
Nice. No, that's super cool. I like that like kind of vibe that people actually like create the connection and they continue with that on their own. And also what you mentioned, like that some people in like the standard communities, let's say if you are in your regime, you're like, you can do it next week, you can do it next month, you can do it next year. I see that vibe a lot from people who just have like comfy jobs, they have, normal life. They would love to change the world, but not today, maybe tomorrow. And I feel like as you take them from their own like space and put them somewhere else, between people who actually changing life. And I think that's also important for everyone, like the inspiration you can get, like other people are actually building. So if other people building, I won't be just sitting here and like thinking about my own life. I will be actually doing something because I want to be part of this. Like I don't want to be left behind. And it's actually really interesting like that, how this all playing out, and that so much innovation is actually happening. It kind of makes sense when you talk about it, but I was not thinking about it before nowadays. So I definitely need to join the next EdgeCity to experience it. So who is, well, the question is, who can actually apply for EdgeCity, like, or what's the like ideal member of EdgeCity? Do you have some like criteria up front, or is it really for everyone and then eventually you decide, like, what's kind of the process and who you would recommend to actually get to EdgeCity?
Yeah, great question. We really focus on this concept of like people that share similar values of being high agency, kind, and curious. And I think that's like a really important like trio to remember. It's like if you're coming to just have an experience like handed to you on a silver platter, and like you don't want to, like, you want to be interested, but you don't want to be interesting, like that's EdgeCity is not the place for you. Like think about, how important it is to like keep up to date with interesting things that you are passionate about, or and that could be anything from like pottery to running to DAOing to building a DeFi protocol to building a neurotech device. Like just be interesting by like caring about your own learning in areas that you're curious about, and approaching things with kindness is an important piece. Like if you're just coming to debate and shit on things and like not be interested in what's going on and like have a very closed mindset on things, like you're not going to contribute in a positive manner, and like that's just like not an enjoyable experience for anyone around you, to especially when it's like we're in this like frontier moment in a way of like building new cities, building new societal models, building new network states. Like it's a very like pioneering space that has a ton of, like here's a massive elephant and like we're all blind and trying to feel our way through it. And if you're sort of not being kind to how someone is thinking about it, you're probably going to miss something else somewhere else. That's like I would say almost like some of the like principles of the values that we want to have people hold. And then like being techno optimistic is super important to us. So people that care about a future that does have humans and technologies around. And that does not mean everyone needs to be excited about being a cyborg. What it does mean is like you deeply care about using like technologies we're seeing in the world to improve humanity and build a better future. And I think about this in terms of we have some people in the community that really care about consciousness and who are looking at like, how do we create the most enlightened versions of ourselves? And that might not feel like it's a very like online experience at all from like the tech we know today. But being the truest version of like a human and the purest, like happiest version of a human is like an incredible technology that we have not cracked yet, right? Like we haven't cracked everyone being happy. We haven't cracked everyone being enlightened. And like if we can actually figure out what that looks like, whether that's very offline tools like, Jana and whatnot, or whether it is like neurotech devices and sort of being much more connected to like what our brains are like how we're scanning our brains and the almost like algorithms that we're choosing to like program ourselves by, like either direction could be super valuable. And both those people have a place at something like Edge. So it's looking at people that like believe in like a techno-optimistic future, believe that anything is possible, and truly care about like human flourishing. Like if you're just like, I don't care how happy I am as a person, I don't care about building products that are going to like change the world, I care about like having a cigarette company and making a lot of money from that, like probably not the space for you. Or if you want to, but if you're like, hey, I actually don't love what I'm doing here and I really want to like look into like, how do I actually help humanity? That would be amazing. This is totally the place for you because you're growth minded. So it really is a place for many different groups. And like, I'll touch on the multi-generational aspect as well. Usually we ended up having 2 kids coming and I saw how much fun they had and how much value people got from interacting with them. And I started looking into studies around like, what makes kids thrive and what makes them like really the like prodigy kids later on, or just like super good at whatever they're doing and super happy at whatever they're doing. And a big piece of it is being surrounded by many different adults where they are in a learning environment and having like one-on-one tutors. And I think AI is going to solve the like one-on-one tutorship in a way over time. But we've done a terrible job of allowing kids to be surrounded by many different adults. Like we've created the school model that we haven't iterated on at all for years. And like now we're starting to see groups iterating on it. And if you think about it, like that was built during the industrial era where we were like, oh, what do we do with kids while we have to go into the factory? It's like most people don't need to do that anymore. We need time to concentrate. Yes. But like factories are not where we're going. Like a lot of people are just staying at home and working. If I had a kid right now, like I'm in my house. I would have been sending them to school. And I don't really want that for my kids one day. Like I really want them to be in an environment where they feel like there's this dynamic sense of learning from many different people. And it's not just learning from like the family unit of like 2 parents at home or 1 parent at home and 5 parents or 5 teachers at school. It's like genuinely being in an environment where like there's adults, there's young students, there's people of all different ages that are socializing and helping one another. And I think that the kids have been extremely valuable for elder participants at Edge. Like everyone talks about how like it's so amazing that there's kids here and like we're so happy about this. At EdgeCity, Lana, we had about 30 kids and it was during the school term, so we didn't know we were going to have any. And then at Edge Esmeralda, we had 80 kids come through. It was during the summer, so that was a bit different. And both experiences, it was this like amazing space of all the adults being like, it is so amazing having kids here. And there's a couple different aspects of that that's important. Like one, it's this like reminder of the future. We are building for these kids. Like we need to build incredible spaces and like a really like a better future for them. It's not just about building in the moment of like what we think is right. It's like we are leaving a legacy with whatever we do. The second aspect is kids playing, like the sense of play. All of us should never lose the sense of play in our lives. Like it is such an incredible way to create and to come up with new ideas and to take risks in areas that like you wouldn't take risks in otherwise. And it's this reminder of like, man, if you play, you can learn in so many different ways. So I think between those 2 things, like it's been extremely valuable to have kids for adults. And then for the kids, they're exposed to so many different adults. So we're going to iterate on the kids programming a lot more. We're doing sort of a summer camp this year for kids. So very excited about what that looks like. And then we're sort of like looking at how can we help different like new age school programs incubate at Edge in some major way. So very excited to see where that goes. And as a result, like this multi-generational side is super important. So not only do we want kids there, but it's like the the older economy, like the sense of retirement, and then go and like hang out in a retirement home, and that's what you do, is also a bizarre concept. Like it makes no sense to me. It's like these are like some of the most talented people we have with so much wisdom, and we're like, you're no longer part of the workforce. Go be in a box. And it's like, wait, this group can like help so much with so many different things. And I've really like been appreciative of the older generations that have come to Edge and shared a lot of their knowledge and also helped with like the children in a lot of ways. So seeing more of that like dynamism in generations and like diversity by generation, which is not something we do a lot, is very important. And then the other piece is multidisciplinary. We sort of decided, especially like crypto is an amazing tool, but it is a tool as part of a much broader stack of what the future of the world is going to be. It is not the only thing that people need to be working on. And I think we've found ourselves like kind of in a bit of a rut in the crypto industry because like we're like, oh, we need to focus on like building these mechanisms and using this mechanism design for everything. But then because we have like taken ourselves and extracted ourselves out of like, where can we apply these mechanisms? What can we do with these mechanisms? Like it's only that interesting to vote on sort of a new like liquidity model that someone's gonna do. It's much more interesting to vote on someone's like real life experiences. Backing up from that, I was like, well, actually, we need to expose all of these mechanisms that we're building to other industries that can actually be using them in some major way. So we've really focused on like frontier technologies, frontier science, frontier society builders, frontier people in culture, in art and beyond. Like art is an important aspect of what we're building because like art depicts a cultural period, right? Like if you actually look at art historically, there are these incredible periods that we've had that are all documented through the art of that time, like the Impressionist era. And, you know, going on from that, it's like, wow, we like pop art and whatnot, like they really match the time. So making sure that we've got art kind of telling the story of the time of that we're in this like crazy tech boom is super important. Having people that really care about building culture and seeing positive culture around is like, you know, something we need to bring along, as well as then people that are building the technology that's like actually changing and influencing the future that we're going to see.
Yeah, and like art is definitely also important for the future because like a lot of the inventions basically started as a art project because like they just like have an inspiration. This could be the future, and someone else, couple years later, maybe actually invented it. So like
Totally.
definitely the art is important. And I was at a great presentation actually in Thailand about that, and it was fascinating how many inventions basically started as a art piece, and then
Totally.
someone else just like made it happen. Well,
Totally.
it's super nice. Like you are excited about the network stage, but how more excited you are about like the kids and future generation. So that's nice to see. And I I kind of relate to the thing you said about like we are not allowing the kids to interact with other adults. I think like adults are like kind of pretending to be busy and like they are not like really like giving their attention to the kids, and also the parents sometimes overprotective, so they don't want the kids to be influenced by others because they think like their way is the only way. But like I have an example of my nephew who is interacting with a lot of grown-ups because my parents have like hospitality business, coffee shop, they are all working kind of around that, and he's there and he's like helping or interacting with people there, going to sit with someone and chat, like basically like he has his own world there, and then go for soccer practice later on. So like actually like he was interacting with like adults his own life, and it feels like he has such a wide perspective. Like compare like I cannot compare it like directly because I don't know the other kids that well, but just my feeling from it, it's like compared to other kids, like he has so much like brought almost like a knowledge about like things and like how people react, and also he's super comfortable talking to people. Like just like he would like you would come, he would sit down and like chat with you about something. Like EdgeCity, yeah, why not? Network states, hey, why not? I will learn something new. Like that kind of approach to life. And so like if you are basically like trying to also focus on that, and now you are letting kids to interact with like the frontier, like the top thinkers in the space who are also kind, as you mentioned, they are interesting. I think that's amazing for the kids and the future generation, because they will have such a head start compared to others. And let's just comment, I definitely had some question, but I forget it while I was talking about that. But it's nice how you're focusing on this multi-generation aspect of it. Well, let me put this question. Is there something I did not ask you, but you would like to say?
Yeah, I mean, let's bring back to sort of the book How to DAO, and like the audience here of like DAOs. I think what's been really interesting about Edge is we've taken sort of the approach of like build community first and then think of the incentive models after. And recognizing that like there's many different incentive models that bring people together, and experience and like positive experience is like one of the most important pieces. So thinking about like how are we generally bringing folks together that are like unbelievably just excited about like building a better future, and that being the primary goal. And then sort of after the fact, thinking about like, okay, well, now how do we like reward all these people for doing such an amazing job of like building and creating, and how do we change the sort of incentive models that currently exist with like more of the extraction mindset by cities. So it's like, how do we create more public goods within the community around the type of technology that people are using, around the incentive models that people have, around the way that people can engage with one another. Like everyone ultimately just wants to be around other interesting people. And like that is just such an important piece for like living a great life. Like you can only go to so many, like if you have everything in the world, you can only go to so many great restaurants every night and go on an amazing holiday at a 5-star hotel. Like that gets pretty boring. But like the never ending supply of like being around other interesting people like doesn't get old. And I think sort of like focusing on that first, and focusing on like creating stuff that is productive, and like having productivity come from an EdgeCity environment, both in the shorter term ones and sort of over time in these longer term spaces that we're partnering with or building. Ultimately, I would love to see like, how do you start like rewarding everyone, and how does everyone feel ownership over it? Like right now, we hope that people in the community feel ownership over Edge as a space to co-create, right? Like it's a platform that anyone can come and co-create in, that buys into the experience and the idea and the values. And the interesting kind of like thing after that is like, okay, well now how does everyone over time get rewarded? And it's not a short-term thing. Like I think that the crypto and especially the DAO space has like really hurt themselves by one, making so many things free, and two, making it so easy to almost like get funding from a DAO. And like it's just like this expectation of like, oh, I should get funds because I typed a comment on the forum. It's like I should get 20K because I typed one thing on the forum. It's like, no, it takes a lot of energy to build something good. Like to build something high quality that the rest of the world actually wants and needs is a multi-year project. It's not just like one click and here you go. So I think that there's this importance of like recognizing that shifting to something like a DAO, or like taking learnings from like DAO models for something like these pop-up communities that are being created around the world is a super important step that will need to happen, but doing it in a way that's like generally rewarding value that is created in the spaces, and not more of this like fighting for proving that I did this and I did this. Like if everyone comes to Edge and expects to be given tokens for, picking up a piece of trash, like, man, we're going to spend all of our time fighting over who's picking up the most trash versus like building the next invention that's going to change the world. Like that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's like we do get stuck in these like really silly games of like what's the important thing, when it's like this whole world's out there to take agency and like build. So I would love to see us get to a stage of like thinking about different interesting models. Like we have not taken VC funding because, we're worried that that would change the incentive dynamic. We are currently a nonprofit because the villages should not be a place that we're like trying to nickel and dime people to take money. Like generally the ticket sales are not covering all the costs. And it's like we're thankful to partners who like believe in the vision, who fund a lot of that as well. And ultimately we do want to get to a point of like that these become super, super self-sustaining. Like last year, everything broke even for us, which is amazing because that was not the case for the experiments the year before. But there's kind of the step of like, we don't just need to break even. We need to like build in incredible like treasury of sorts or an endowment that actually supports like building future focus spaces that like make a better world. And to get there will take time, and it will take a whole community effort, and like it takes a village to build a village, and it definitely needs to like take a city to build a city. So there's aspects of learning from like how cities run today, but then thinking about like how do you make it more decentralized from a funding standpoint. There's aspects to take from DAOs, but there's ways of like how do you like generally get people to feel intrinsically motivated to do work versus just like extrinsically motivated, and how do you also incentivize people to work on the right things that are going to change the world versus get stuck in like silly games just to have a immediate one-hit reward.
Yeah, I agree. Rome was not built overnight, It just takes time. And I'm glad to hear like that you are thinking like similar way, like this kind of the entrepreneurial mindset. Like we are building towards like, big goals and long-term kind of sustainability. Definitely enjoyed that mindset more than some mindset of like get rich quick type of thing, like try basically as short-term plan as you can. And I feel like the VC model is kind of coming towards that. Like VCs want to get their fair share as soon as possible, but like that's the business model, so why not? Like it's just different business model. And as you mentioned, like the short-term incentives, like tokens for picking up the trash and stuff, you can see it in the crypto everywhere. Like if there is some announcement of token launch, or like there is a chance that some project will launch a token, like people will just start like posting in the Discord and on Twitter and everywhere about nothing. Basically they are contributing zero value. There is like nothing going on. However, they hope that you will be checking like the number of messages they send and give them tokens for it, which is
Which
silly.
but at the same time, that's the incentive structure we've created, right? So it's not an individual's fault for following the model that has been created. So it's just all about like, can we give everything enough time to like really push forward a lot of just being thoughtful about like a lot of different incentive structures that we should try and tweak and change in order to build these into like what they can be, which is like incredibly empowering tools that are super powerful at changing to ecosystems in the world versus like closed, spaces that are like closed source companies and privatized.
Yeah, I agree. Like we created the incentive. Like it's our fault that it's worked like that. Like people are just people. They will act, how they are programmed. Like they are not computers, but they are pretty well pre-programmed. So you can like assume how they will act if you create that type of incentive. And we did it, and it worked a little bit for a while. But I think like yeah, change is needed, and we need to think as the whole crypto industry like more long term and make sure that like we are bringing value and creating value for everyone. So last thing before we wrap up, because like you mentioned also the fitness kind of part of the EdgeCity. So my first question is like, what needs to be my pace per mile so I can join EdgeCity? Is there any like bar? Like I need to qualify for at least like a Boston Marathon to be able to actually participate in
Exactly.
EdgeCity?
Have to qualify for the Boston, have to do a half marathon. No, not at all. We just want everyone to do like 30 minutes of movement a day and have like be more thoughtful about the meals they eat, like minimize seed oils, minimize um, foods that are really high in sort of microplastics, minimize the use of like non-organic food and like try eat, whole foods where possible. It's sort of like that's just the start. We're doing things like using light bulbs that aren't sort of like flashing LEDs in rooms. We like there's some thoughts around the type of light that you should see and like is blue light good or bad? It's really just about like having a darker space in the evenings. So making sure people are using blue light glasses, having people spend time outside, getting sort of their vitamin D fix. That's all an important piece of what Edge is trying to promote. And like over time, we hope that the full-time environments that we build are generally seen as like healthy cities around the world.
That's amazing. Like I'm not sure with the oils, but I'm also trying to eat healthy and move at least 30 minutes a day. I also do like sauna at least five times a week, which is
Amazing.
amazing. I love that. Is it Brian Johnson coming to EdgeCity anytime soon? Do you know him?
Brian's, I do know him. He's great. I love the Don't Die movement. I think he's done an amazing job with that. And we've got a lot of different folks in the health world that we've been working with.
That's amazing. Also, maybe just like to mention the edge cities you are planning right now. So what's the next one and then the one after?
Yeah, for sure. A big thing for us this year is like generally being global as a community, which means we'll be going to many different places and bringing in a lot more people into both the broader like pop-up city movement, the network state movement, the way of like building better futures, like all of that is a piece of this, and bringing more people into the crypto ecosystem in a positive way, I think is a big pull for us. We will be in Austin, just doing sort of like a week-long showcase. So if people don't necessarily feel excited about going to the cold in Denver, please come to Austin. We'll be doing something right before South by Southwest for a full week. We'll have a bunch of people working together. We've got workshops running every day. Each day will be a different theme, one on health and biotech, another on crypto, another on sort of AI and philosophy and education, another on hard tech, one on communities and new cities. So truly, like there'll be a whole range happening across the week. And I think it's going to be an incredibly special time. Then we'll be in South Africa. So that will be in April 3rd to the 12th. Like it's very important to sort of tie in the African network, and South Africa is my home. So it's an area that I understand culturally very well. And there's so many people excited that we want to activate and bring into the network in a meaningful way. And then we'll be doing Edge Esmeralda again. And I'm very excited to see Esmeralda actually move forward and starting to build as a full-time new town that'll be north of Healdsburg. And I think what's so exciting with all of these is like, can we bring a smaller group of people together where the density of shared values and amazing ideas is higher? So it feels like you've got the energy around you of a city while being in these like smaller towns or like in a group that just is a smaller group generally, but the density of like interestingness around you is so high that it feels like you're in that like buzz without having to deal with the logistics of being in a city.
Well, that's awesome. Definitely cold Denver. It's not like something, everyone appreciates. So there is a good alternative in Austin. Also, so many of my friends here from San Francisco are thinking to go to H Esmeralda, and it's great to see that it will be actually a permanent space. So it's, moving towards that kind of long-term. And last thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if you know, but Workout DAO, it's mostly based in Cape Town. So it would be super cool if you connect with the community there at the Workout DAO community and you do some workouts together, because like both are focused on fitness and health. So it will be definitely nice. Like I saw the picture of the hikes there and everything. Like it's just awesome. I wish I can go. Doesn't work my schedule now, but like Cape Town is definitely on the list to visit. So maybe next year for HCD, I would join. Anyway, Janine, it was amazing discussion. I learned tons about the network states, HCD, your plans overall, how we can improve the society we live in, which is fabulous. So thank you again for coming, and good luck with everything what you are doing.
Thanks, Pankar. I appreciate the chat, and congrats again on the book. I think it's awesome.
Thanks for listening. We hope you are as excited about the DAO movement as we are. Don't forget to check out our courses, grab our book, and join our community on Discord. Until next time, let's build the future of DAOs together. You can find all the available resources at howtodao.com.